So the royal family's been out in full force this afternoon, attending the annual Garter Day ceremony at Windsor. But once again, the celebrations are being overshadowed by Harry and Meghan, who are reportedly eyeing up a deal with a French fashion house. The pair have recently parted ways with Spotify, with the boss at the company accusing them of being work-shy grifters. Joining me live from Windsor is TalkTV's royal editor, Sarah Hewson. Hi, Sarah. Good to see you. Tell us a little bit about what Garter Day is for and what the royal family does on that day.
Hi, Vanessa. Yes, Garter Day is one of the most traditional events in the royal calendar. It is the day to celebrate the Order of the Garter. That is the oldest, most senior order of chivalry here in the UK. It was established in 1348 by King Edward III, who was inspired by tales of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and wanted to set up his own order. And it is for members of the royal family. It has former prime ministers, people who have served the community. And so today we saw the King and the Queen. We saw Prince William, Princess Anne and Prince Edward, among others, taking part in a procession wearing full velvet robes and plumed hats through the grounds of Windsor Castle and into St George's Chapel for a ceremony. Now, one person missing was Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, excluded from the public side of this event for a second year, given the scandal surrounding him. But it's a very busy time for the royal family. We had Trooping the Colour on Saturday at Vanessa. We've had Garter Day today, the first for the new king. And we have Royal Ascot getting underway tomorrow, again, the first of Charles's reign.
And so the royal family enjoying this? I mean, it's a beautiful sunny day. It's a wonderfully traditional occasion. Did you feel the rapport between the king and queen? Did you feel the royal Princess Anne exuding the support that she really has given her brother? How did you respond to seeing the family like this?
Yes, well, I have to say it's pretty hot to be in those very heavy velvet robes, Vanessa. And we had one guardsman fainting just as the procession was about to make its way to St George's Chapel. There was a lovely moment between the Princess of Wales and the Duchess of Edinburgh as they saw their respective husbands, the Prince of Wales and the Duke of Edinburgh, coming down the hill to St George's Chapel. They are not a part of that procession. They're not in the order of the Garter, and so they were waiting at the door of St George's Chapel for them. There was a lovely smile as they saw them coming down, and I think we saw that family coming together again today, maintaining traditions, maintaining the pageantry that this country does so well.
Let's talk now about Meghan and Harry, because how could we fail so to do when they've been branded grifters by one of the Spotify bosses, a former exec at the company. A, what does he mean by grifters? B, we can tell it's not a compliment. C, is it fair or right to call them such?
Yeah, well, it's by no means a compliment, is it? And what we heard from Bill Simmons, who is head of podcast and innovation and monetization at Spotify, is that Meghan and Harry didn't deliver on what they were supposed to do. They had this $20 million deal with Spotify, a 3-year deal. And in the 2.5 years since that deal was signed, they have delivered one series, 12 episodes of Archetypes, as well as one Christmas special. Now, in his own podcast, Bill Simmons said, "You'd have to get me drunk and ask me the story about the Zoom call I had with Prince Harry to discuss podcast ideas with him. That's one of my best stories," and the tone of that implying that they couldn't get anywhere with decent ideas for further content from Meghan and Harry. And thus we end up in the situation where Spotify has decided to cut their losses, although it was a successful podcast for them, and not to renew the contract with Meghan and Harry, which is humiliating. But as you mentioned there, the potential Dior agreement, I think there'll be a lot of spin now about the rebranding of the Duchess of Sussex in particular and what might be ahead for her.
And so we wonder whether, if they do the deal with Dior, Sarah, whether they will actually model products, whether Harry will be posing wearing a Dior watch, you know, spraying himself with Eau Sauvage or whatever it is, whether Meghan will be, you know, draped over some bridge in the Seine wearing a Dior ball gown, that kind of a thing, you know, starring in the perfume adverts, or whether it'll be a more subtle approach where they just filter through to various events wearing Dior, and also whether Prince Harry really sees himself as a model or an influencer.
I suspect the latter, Vanessa, that we will see them wearing Dior to high-profile events. And actually, that's already been happening unofficially, perhaps giving us an indication of what might be to come. Meghan chose Christian Dior for the Platinum Jubilee. Then when they attended the service of Thanksgiving at St. Paul's, she was head to toe in Dior for that. She wore a Dior hat for the late Queen's funeral. She wore Dior for Archie's christening. But more recently, we had Harry wearing Dior for the King's coronation, and Dior promoting that in a tweet, talking about tailoring fit for royalty. So perhaps that gives us an indication of what's to come. Is it a Meghan deal, or is it two for the price of one, effectively? We're going to see the Duke and Duchess of Dior.
What we do see, though, we see the Duke and Duchess of Dior on one hand, and we see Prince William and Kate dealing with very different issues. Cost of living crisis going on. We've already discussed council housing on this programme today because one of the headlines, Britain's to be priority on council house list. You know, homelessness, a huge issue. And Prince William really seeking to address this, not just by cutting a ribbon or clapping when people dance in the street, but actually by doing something very concrete. So, and also quite revolutionary. So tell us what William is planning to do about homelessness.
Well, we're expecting a big announcement coming up later this month, Vanessa, on a major project from the Prince of Wales, the first big project since he stepped up to be the direct heir to the throne. He has talked about homelessness as being his lifelong ambition, ending homelessness, not just managing it, not just maintaining the status quo, but actually bringing homelessness to an end. He cites the example of the COVID pandemic, the Everyone In scheme that brought people off the streets and into sheltered accommodation, and says if we can achieve that, then think what we could do in the long run. And he sees himself a little bit like his father's role, effectively, as a convener of people, that he can bring the various different organisations and bodies needed together in order to make a difference. He also wants to educate his children about this, following the example that his mother set. She took him to a homeless shelter when he was just 11 years old. He says he wants to do the same with his own children. He already talks to them about the plight of homeless people. He's particularly concerned about youth homelessness and the rising numbers of aged 16 to 24-year-olds who find themselves homeless as they come out of care, for example, family breakdown, domestic abuse. He cites as various different reasons for that. And what's he going to do about it in concrete terms? Well, he gave a hint that actually he is contemplating using some of his Duchy of Cornwall land, 130,000 acres that stretch from Cornwall to Kent, to build social housing, to provide more housing for those in need. And it's his 41st birthday on Wednesday, Vanessa. Last year, his 40th birthday, he marked it with a visit to homeless shelters and selling the big issue himself. And I should expect in the coming weeks a big announcement on this subject from the Prince of Wales.